Did I do what? No, I had to park on the street. It was full. You insisted? Oh, yeah, I just parked like a block up the street. It's okay. It wasn't far. I'm used to it. I see.
All right, 6:30.
Is that what you had?
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Gives you a deep bass tone. This evening we have two types of meetings. We're going to have a short public hearing on some performance management framework issues. And then we'll get into our regular public meeting. We have several issues here, and I think there'll be several presenters. So let me introduce the board. I'll wait for that. Why don't you do your thing, and then I'll introduce the board when we get to the regular meeting. Ms. Tyler?
All right. Good evening. So the following proposal to amend the PCSB technical guide for the performance management framework was opened for public comment on November 17, 2014, and will remain open until December 16, 2014. Any public comments we receive on or before December 16th will be publicly discussed at the January 26, 2014 public meeting, when the DC Public Charter School Board will vote on whether to approve the proposed updates. So the revisions to the 2014-15 PMF technical guide include, number one, adding some clarity to existing business rules. Number two, including tier cut ranges for the adult education PMF. And as per the business rules of the PMF, to introduce the 2014-15 floors, which uses a 3-year weighted average. This recalculation keeps the PMF in line with the current performance of schools. At this time, PCSB will not be introducing tier cutoffs for the early childhood PMF. I'll begin with clarifying the business rules that we're proposing to update. I'll summarize the updates to our floors, and I'll close with sharing our methodology for how to apply the tier cut ranges for the adult education PMF. So the following changes to specific business rules in the technical guide include, number one, a business rule for calculating the full academic year for the early childhood PMF. Number two, a business rule for calculating college and career readiness measures when schools don't meet the minimum survey response rate for the adult education PMF. We're also proposing to update the student achievement measure for the adult education PMF to include National External Diploma Program, also known as the NEDP graduates. We're proposing a business rule to exclude students with disabilities in non-public placements from high school PMF gateway measures, which include PSAT, SAT, and ACT, college readiness and college acceptance measures. We're proposing business rules for how to validate data for the 9th grade on track measure for the high school PMF, as well as business rules for calculating the early childhood PMF attendance floors and targets. The floor recommendations that we are proposing are as follows for the applicable framework. So for early childhood PMF, we're recommending that the board increase the 2015 floor for the K-2 and or K-3 re-enrollment rate floor from 60 to 64.8. Just want to clarify that this is not for pre-K. It's just for K-2 and K-3 grades. We're proposing to increase the 2015 floor for the re-enrollment rate from 60.7 to 65.6. For the middle school PMF, to increase the 2015 floor for the re-enrollment rate from 60.7 to 65.6. We're proposing to increase several PMF floors for the high school PMF, PSAT performance, SAT and ACT performance, the college acceptance rate, 9th grade on track, and re-enrollment. And we're also proposing a decrease to the 4-year graduation rate floor. The final change, and the most substantive one that I'm going to describe tonight, is for the adult education PMF. So PCSB staff is recommending that adult education schools are identified as either Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 on the 2014 and 15 adult education PMF according to the following description. I've given you all a calculator, just maybe to help you understand as I clarify some of the technical points. We use this calculator to project performance on the PMF for adult ed. So for Tier 1, which is our high-performing campus designation, we're proposing that campuses earning a Tier 1 status must meet or exceed a weighted range score of 65% on the student progress, student achievement, leading indicators, college and career readiness, and mission-specific goals indicators, and that's mission-specific if applicable to a school program. The weighted range score is determined based on the number of points earned for each PMF measure, which is relative to the floor and the target. For example, if a measure has a floor of 0 and a target of 100, and the school has 65% of students meeting this measure, and that's the only measure for the applicable indicator, the school would earn a weighted range score of 65%. Also, in order to be Tier 1, we're proposing that campuses meet or exceed the 50% survey response rate for all eligible career and college readiness measures. For Tier 2, we're proposing that schools must meet or exceed a weighted range score of 35% on each of the indicators. So student progress, student achievement, leading indicators, college and career readiness, and mission-specific goals, again, if applicable. And we're also proposing to require that campuses meet or exceed the 50% survey response rate for all college and career readiness measures. We would label a school as Tier 3 or low performing if a school did not meet the 35% weighted range score on any of the student achievement, leading indicators, college and career readiness, or mission-specific goals, or if a school does not meet the 50% survey response rate for all of the college and career readiness measures. You may ask why we didn't propose a standard cutoff range like we do for the other PMFs. As we've seen in our first 2 pilot years, the adult ed framework is different from the standard elementary, middle, and high school framework, and I just wanted to highlight some of the reasons why and why we proposed an alternative. Most of the targets in our student achievement measures in the elementary, middle, and high school PMF have aspirational targets of 100% proficiency. And to this date, we have not had schools receive the maximum amount of points for these measures with aspirational targets. For the adult ed PMF, in our pilot year, we had some measures where schools surpassed the maximum amount of points received.
It's a lot.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is. It is exciting. Another reason, Another reason why the adult ed framework is different, we also align our floors and targets to the 10th and 90th percentile of the previous year's school's performance. This methodology, our cohort is just simply too small. Last year we had 7 schools, and to calculate the 10th and 90th percentile for 7 schools is not a statistically reliable thing to do. We also have a limited amount of data to make updates to our floors and targets on an annual basis. We also see a difference in the framework because this framework allows for schools to create mission-specific measures. And for what we saw, all of the schools that proposed these all met the mission-specific goals that they met, and again, earned the maximum amount of points. We could set a numerical target, as we do with the other frameworks, but here's what would have to happen. We would have to go back to the drawing board with our task force, redefine our floors and targets for each and every measure. And I think to do that at this point of the year for the 14-15 PMF would not be fair to our schools. It may also undermine the idea that schools need to perform high in all areas. So we just want to reiterate, this framework needs to be a rigorous one to identify high-quality adult education programs that are preparing our students for success in post-secondary and career opportunities. We believe that schools need to be successful in each indicator, and I want to explicitly say what that means. A Tier 1 school is a school that does a good job at preparing our students for the GED and learning the English language by progressing them through the educational functioning levels. We measure this with the Student Progress Indicator. A Tier 1 school ensures that students are ready to take the GED and any DP and pass it. This is exemplified in our Student Achievement Indicator. A Tier 1 school ensures that students are coming to school regularly and take their pre- and post-tests to determine their success. This is measured by our leading indicators. Most importantly, a Tier 1 school follows up to ensure that their students enter employment with the skills to keep their job and to also pursue post-secondary endeavors. This is measured in our Career and College Readiness Indicator. These floors, targets, and Tier 1 cutoffs were researched by our partners at AIR and Timbo, and most importantly, voted on by a task force. The criteria we're asking our schools to meet does not depart from the national reporting system imposed by the Department of Education for adult learners. And our criteria for the Tier 1 cutoff for each measure was agreed on by our task force to be better than that of Maryland. Maryland has a large urban district that could be compared to the progress of our students in DC. Our Tier 3 criteria was characterized as the performance of the lowest performing states around the country. You may hear some public comment this evening asking us to lower the bar for what a Tier 1 program looks like in DC. I really urge you to think about the adults in our community who are out of work, without a high school diploma, who would greatly benefit from an adult ed program that I described earlier. We designed this framework to hold our adult ed schools accountable and to make sure the public is clear on what high quality looks like. The last thing I wanted to say is we don't expect schools to hit that 65% cutoff for each and every measure. There are over 15 measures on the adult ed PMF. We're asking that schools score 65% for the weighted range score for each indicator, which summarizes the progress on a variety of measures. So thank you for your time. I just wanted to make sure you understood the proposal. Any questions?
Thank you. Members, any questions? Go ahead. No?
I wanted to ask about the college and career readiness indicators, particularly the ones post-graduation. So in terms of measuring the percentage of graduates who have entered the workforce and then retained a job 3 quarters following. And I guess I really just wanted to ask about methodology. So it's percentage. It's of the, I guess it's 2 questions. One is of the, so it's the percentage of those who graduated, or the percentage of those for whom definitive information could be?
So we have 2 business rules for that. We have more than that. We have students that are in the labor force, classified as in the labor force. We use the definition from the Department of Labor. Students who were in a program for 12 hours or more, and students who have exited the program. So once they exit, then we begin to track this measure. So entered employment or entered post-secondary happens after a student exits the program. Retained employment happens 3 quarters or 9 months after a student exits the program.
So the percentage, the denominator in the percentage is the number of students who have exited the program, or if there's a student who definitive information cannot be attained, where do they factor into that percentage? So
I mentioned earlier the survey response rate. So if a school cannot get a response from a student about whether they have a job or have entered post-secondary, they're not included in that rate. We do ask schools to surpass the rate of 50% for a survey response rate, which is similar to that required by the National Reporting System for adult ed schools. So the student you described, if we can't reach them, we don't know if they have a job, they would not be included in that rate.
So they would be in neither the numerator nor the denominator?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And is any, and the methodology then is strictly the response to the survey?
It is. We do have several schools, 4, who are interested in pursuing data matching with, I'm sorry, the agency is slipping my mind, to actually confirm the students have Department of Employment Services, to confirm whether students are earning paychecks, to do a matching of their USIs instead of calling them to verify employment. A lot of states use this methodology. The concern is, I said USI, I meant Social Security number. If the student doesn't give the Social Security number to the school, then we cannot do a match, and schools aren't required to collect that. So it may be a challenge for some schools, but it is something we want to pursue.
Okay, thanks.
With the adult education PMF, which I'm really excited with my colleague out in the audience about, can you briefly talk about the level of input that we got from adult school leaders, so just like get that on the record?
So I get to be a part of many task force groups working on the PMF, and adult ed school leaders, I would have to say, have the best attendance at our task force meetings. They're so diligent with sending me their comments. They're here tonight to share with you as well. So I get a lot of feedback from them on just about everything that I propose. They're active and really involved in making this a strong framework.
Okay, great. And thank you for your service, adult leaders.
They'll be up shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I have 2 adult leaders. We're going to do 2 minutes apiece. And after that, I have Julie Myers signed up and Sarah Navarro. Anybody else? Well, let's do those 2 since they bothered to sign up, and then we'll see how we're running on time for anybody else. So if you just come on up. Hi, Julie. Yeah, come on. How many? Let me just see a show of hands. How many? 1. I see 1 other. Is that it? Am I missing somebody in the back? No? Why don't you come on up then, too? Then we get all 3 of you.
And I have copies from.
Great, thank you. And if you just introduce yourselves when you get the mic.
I'm Julie Meyer, Executive Director of the Next Step Public Charter School.
Sarah Navarro, Director of the Maya Angelou Young Adult Learning Center.
And I'm Andrew Schwab. I'm at the LAYC Career Academy.
Thank you. Before you get started, who's keeping time?
I will.
Right there? Okay, keep your eye on her.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick, but not talk too fast. Thanks for having us. So, as you heard from Rashida, PCSB is proposing a structure by which the adult ed schools must obtain a Tier 1 or 65% score in each of the 5 framework categories in the PMF in order to achieve a Tier 1 status. So this means, in effect, that our schools are going to be tiered according to our lowest category. In other words, we can hit 65% in 4 categories, but if we don't hit it in the 5th one, that's how we're scored. We feel that that really negates the totality of the PMF and really makes a mockery of all the hard work that everyone has put in, staff, but also the school leaders, into creating this comprehensive framework. And we feel we should be scored on the totality of the framework, not on one category. It would be possible under this scheme for a school to score 80 and land in Tier 3. It's also possible for a school to barely score 65 and be in Tier 1. So among other things, we think it will be very confusing to members of the public and anyone looking at the raw score and the tiering system. Apparently, this was developed for 2 reasons. Many adult ed programs were landing in Tier 1 in the pilot, and PCSB wants Tier 1 to be aspirational. Also, apparently, many schools created kind of a slam dunk mission-specific goals. But the schools recognize that these may be problems, but we don't think the proposal is a good solution. If scores appear high, perhaps that's because you have a very strong group of schools, I would suggest. Many of the schools offer really GED plus. We're not just traditional adult ed. We offer all the comprehensive services that GED students traditionally need. Also, if the PMF is too easy, rather than having a skewed tiering system, we are willing to revisit floors and targets. The threshold for each tier could be adjusted. The tiering could be postponed until we come up with a more satisfactory solution. And we believe that you all, as our regulators and the public, can rely on the 100-point scale until we come up with a better tiering system. And I would just highlight also the category that you asked about, Mr. Seufer, is still of concern. Schools that don't reach 50% of our exited students, and that includes students who came to our school for less than a week. And it's challenging reaching our students, believe me. Schools that don't hit that 50% reach rate will automatically land in Tier 3. And in my opinion, that's landing in Tier 3 for really not achieving a kind of administrative task, not because we're not doing a good job as educators. So we would ask that you not approve this proposal, and that even though none of us want to do more work on the PMF, that we go back to the drawing board on the tiers.
Okay, thank you. We may come back to you with questions, but
Okay.
stick to the time, and I promise you we'll get back to you with questions.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to actually, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and skip over the first part, which is the rationale behind why I don't think this is the right proposal. I think Julie covered it really nicely. And I'm just going to launch into what I think should be done in lieu of that. So the first idea would be just aligning it with the other frameworks. An average of 65% across the board seems to make sense. It allows for some variability in schools and communities, but it still ensures high standards and high rigor. If the board is not willing to consider that, we recommend instituting a relative model for college and career readiness. So we operate in Ward 7. Our students are from Ward 7 and 8. To give you an idea, the unemployment rates were approximately 15% and 18% respectively, as compared to other wards which have fewer than 5%. And as you know, this rate only includes those actively seeking employment and doesn't really look, and isn't even looking at it by age. So our students are 17 to 24 years old. They're in Wards 7 and 8. The odds are really stacked against them in terms of employability. So given the statistics, and that's not to say that we don't want to and do everything we can to get them employed, but given these statistics, we propose that the metric be modified to measure growth from baseline data by location, and as opposed to setting a hard target across the board, which disadvantages schools that are really trying to serve the most difficult students in the city to serve. We'd be happy to work with experts in the field and the board to develop a robust measure. Like Julie said, we've been working on this, but we'll continue to work on this. We think it's really important. Since the board stands firm on its desire to track post-secondary outcomes of all students, which we absolutely agree with, we want to know what our students are up to. We feel that it's necessary to adjust what constitutes a program participant. I think, again, to Mr. Seufer's point, there was an assumption that maybe a program participant was a program graduate. No, we're actually required to track everyone who has been in our program for 12 hours or more. So for the Young Adult Learning Center, that equates to just a couple of years of programming. So we'd like to revisit that. We would recommend that a student should complete a minimum of 180 hours at the Young Adult Learning Center, so that would be 30 to 60 days of programming, depending if they're a half or a full day student, in order for them to really be included in our metric. We feel like in that month, we can reach the student, we can get them some skills, even if they don't graduate, we can put them on a better path to employability, and we should be held accountable for them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We want to second the original points made of requiring 65 or 35% for all categories, all 5 categories, and being knocked down to tier 2 or 3 just by missing out one category. A school could be 100% in 4 categories and 64% in the 5th category and be knocked down to tier 2, whereas a school that scored 66 across the board would be a tier 1 school. Those 2 schools, in my mind, would not necessarily be equal, but based on this criteria, the second school would be ranked better than the first. And we also have concerns about the career and college readiness measurement and reaching 50% of students is a challenge. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy for all the schools. And then we also have concerns about the 12-hour criteria of a student. Basically, at our school, that's 2 days. And as much as we try our best, it's difficult to reach a student in 2 days in 12 hours. So that's really a difficult criteria to reach as far as counting that student. So we support most of all the ideas that were expressed earlier.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was interested in the notion of baseline data by location. Can you speak about that? Could you explain it?
Sure. So, I mean, I think what I've been trying to do is drill down the data a little bit more. If we look at our population of 17 to 24-year-olds, when they come to the front door, what's their likelihood of becoming employed? Is it, can we say that it's 5%, it's 12%? Let's look at what it really means for that group of young people, and then let's set an aspirational target that's well above that. And then we can demonstrate that we have moved the needle. I think that we really need to focus on growth as opposed to absolute, because we know that these young people have been out of school for years. Their job prospects are low in their own communities. We're working very hard with employers to get those opportunities in place. But let's allow them. Let's see that incremental growth. And I think that we could work together with some city leaders. I think we could get those data, and we could put together a really robust framework that would be really smart and innovative. And I would love to be involved in that process.
What's your thinking about by location?
By location, because wards 7 and 8 are, where, if you look at employment rates by location, these are where our students are coming from. So we are choosing to serve.
The student lives in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the ward that the student lives in.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have a sense of what the current or recent data on employment rates is for your population?
I have reached out, I have the more coarse data in terms of what I shared, 15-18%. But I think, if we drill down a little bit more, I don't have those figures yet. I've reached out to a number of people, and I'm trying to refine them.
And I ask that because I'm wondering, is some of this just because it's sort of a bit of an unknown quantity, and we're not sure what the numbers or the
I think
scores are going to be?
some of it is that. There are some folks that have some data. I think it's about compiling it and really spending the time to look at it and slice it in the ways that we're interested in looking at it for our particular population.
Okay. Okay.
Any more? Robert? Okay, so what is our schedule here on?
We're coming back in January?
Yeah, Rashida, what's the schedule here?
So you all are voting on the framework next month. Our public comment period ends tomorrow. So these comments, in addition to any others we may have received or receive tomorrow, will be included in the final proposal that we will share with you next month.
Okay, and this, I don't want to rush. I think at least for me, and I'm not schooled in this area, there's some valuable things to look at. And normally what you do is you prepare a status report that says, here's the comment and here's how staff responds to it. So we will have a chance to do that. And they have a chance to talk with you in between now and then. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll give copies of their comments.
I have some.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Okay, well, that concludes our public hearing. And I'm ready to open the public meeting. First, I introduce to my right Rick Cruz, a new board member, Sarah Mead, Scott Pearson, who's a non-voting ex officio executive director, Darren Woodruff, vice chair, Don Seufer. We have one other really active committee, and that's the Finance Committee, which he heads, and Barbara Knopfler. Can I get a motion for the agenda?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Is there any members of the public, or first, are there any elected officials? Usually that's from the neighborhood commission. Are there any elected officials who want to address the body? Any members of the public? We'll have another public comment period at the end of the meeting. Okay. We've got two sets of minutes. Could I have why don't we just have one motion on the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes, both minutes.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And as normal, I just want to read the $25,000 and over contracts into the record. And I'd like to do the same with the DC bilingual technology plan. And now we have two charter renewals applications for approval or denial. First one would be Cedar Tree, and that'll be followed by Paul, PCS.
Hello, my name is Sarah Medway. I'm a Senior Charter Agreement Specialist with PCSB, and I will be presenting the two renewal analyses from staff, but before I do that, I will let Cedar Tree introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm LaTanya Henderson, head of school for Cedar Tree Academy.
Good evening. I am Monica Ray. I am board vice chair.
Welcome.
Okay. For both of the renewals that I'm presenting tonight, staff analyzed the schools according to the following standard. The School Reform Act requires PCSB to renew a school's charter, except that the board shall not renew a charter if there's a finding that the school has not met their goals and academic achievement expectations, or if there's a finding that the school has materially violated the law or its charter. Aside from that, PCSB is required by the School Reform Act to revoke a school's charter if there's a finding that the school engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to generally accepted accounting principles, or if it engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement or is economically non-viable. To give you a quick overview of Cedar Tree's programming, the school opened in 2000. It underwent its first charter review in 2006-07, during which the board found that the school met all of its academic and non-academic standards. In 2008, the school applied for and was approved by the PCSB board to assume operations of a closing charter school in the district. In January 2012, there was a second charter review of the school in which the board voted to continue the school's charter, although it did note the low rigor of the program and a low re-enrollment rate. In February 2013, the school made a major change to its programming, and at that time it submitted a petition to amend its charter to do a few things. First, to terminate its contract with Mosaica, that had been its charter management organization over the course of the past 13 years. And also to reduce its grade span from pre-K 3 to 8 to serve only students in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, and finally to adopt the early childhood PMF as its goals and expectations. PCSB has reviewed the school's performance in the three areas: academics, compliance, and fiscal standing, and staff has found that the school has met the renewal standard. In that it met all of the goals related to the early childhood PMF, with the exception of two that staff invalidated for technical reasons, and that it partially met another goal. And so because of that, we find that it substantially met its goals and expectations. Given, though, that the school very recently restructured, PCSB, and given that PCSB couldn't fully evaluate their performance in early childhood math, given that technicality, PCSB staff recommends that you renew the school, but only that it be renewed to operate pre-kindergarten and kindergarten grades. and also that PCSB will closely monitor the school over the next 3 years to ensure that it is continuing to meet its goals and academic achievement expectations. At the end of that 3 years, PCSB may elect to conduct another review. Questions?
Would you repeat the part again about the pre-K through to kindergarten in the recommendation?
Sure. The school has expressed interest in growing up, and you can clarify that. But PCSB's recommendation is that at this time, the board vote to renew the school's charter so that the school will continue operating only pre-kindergarten and kindergarten grades, at least for the next 3 years until we've had a chance to more thoroughly assess their performance as an early childhood school.
And then what are the options after 3 years?
At that time, well, Cedar Tree always has the right to submit a petition
Right.
to amend its charter to expand its grades, and PCSB would be open to having that conversation in 3 years.
Members, any questions of the staff or the representatives of Cedar Tree?
Yeah, I'd be curious just to hear, from you all, maybe briefly an overview of your academic program. And I'm curious, given that it's just pre-K and K, what's the path for your students after they, move into first grade and beyond?
We're working very hard to prepare them for first grade, where parents ask us all the time, what school do you recommend? We're just working, we don't necessarily recommend a school. We do work with our local charter schools in Ward 8 to ensure and hope that our students will be able to go to those schools. We have worked with Chantel and other charter school leaders to make sure that our kindergarten program will and does prepare them for first grade. So we feel very confident that we're getting students ready for first grade.
Okay. Any particular challenges that you're encountering or positive features that you would want to highlight?
Well, I do want to go on record and just thank Sarah and Aaron. They have been outstanding in helping us through this process, and it has been a process, but they've been extremely helpful, and we're very grateful for all the support that these two outstanding ladies at PCSB has given us. And definitely we face the challenges that most of the schools in Ward 8 face. We are struggling to get our kids to school every day on time, and struggling to make sure that they're ready to learn. And we're just excited about the challenges that we face every day.
So Sarah mentioned the school's aspiration to potentially add grades in the future. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that, but also just to hear about, looking forward to the next 3 years until the next time we'll review you, but 15 years is the length of the charter term. What are your goals for seeing improved outcomes for the children that you currently have as well in pre-K?
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again?
What are your goals for the progress that you'd like to see for the preschool and kindergarten students you currently have? And also to talk a little bit about your aspirations to grow.
Yes, our goals for our current students is really to help to make sure that they achieve, basically getting the foundation. We are committed to building a solid foundation for our students so they can be very successful when they reach first grade, second grade, and beyond. We didn't have a problem, and we don't have a problem with PCSB's recommendation of the 3 years. We want to grow because parents want us to grow. Parents want to put their child in a school where they know the school will continue to add a grade, and they can call that their home. They want that, and we recognize that, but we're also dedicated to having a program that's solid, that's a solid program, and we're okay with the 3-year wait to make sure that our program is the absolute best in the city.
And when you think about how you'll know that your program is achieving those goals, what are some of the data that you'll be looking at to do that, and where would you, how would you hope to see them change in the next 3 years?
You will see our test scores just beyond, going just beyond expectation in terms of the PMF. We will continue to meet all of our PMF goals, which adequately, I believe, and I was on that task force to help develop the PMF goals for the early childhood with PCSB, and I believe that you will see our children exceed our PMF goals, and you will see that the data will represent what a great job we're doing.
Great. Why don't we, I'd be glad to entertain a motion if there are no more comments.
I make a motion that we accept this C2 renewal for another 15 years.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Nope. Look forward to visiting your school. Though.
Thank you. Please come out
All in
anytime.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank Paul, PCS.
Okay. I'm going to now present the staff's analysis of Paul's 15-year renewal report. It's the same analysis, seeing whether the school met its goals and academic achievement expectations, maintained its compliance, and managed its finances properly. The school began operation in 2000, actually as a conversion from a DCPS school, through the work of the school's founder, Cecil Middleton. And it remains to date the only school to convert in such a manner. It started with a 7th through 9th grade program, and it's now expanded down to 6th grade. And its middle school program focuses on a AAA program in academics, arts, and athletics. And it's currently growing its high school up. This is its first year. It now has a junior class, and it'll graduate its first class of students in 2016-17. 15-16. Thank you. In July 2013, the school adopted the performance management framework as its goals and expectations. The school historically has been a very high performer on the PMF and has scored in the Tier 1 range over each year that the PMF was offered. And so PCSB and the school agreed to this amendment, and that the school would meet a certain benchmark on the PMF in 2013-14 to be eligible for renewal. This was complicated this summer because OSSI received a complaint regarding test integrity at the school, and because of this, decided to investigate the school's test integrity procedures and found that the school had improperly erased stray marks on tests. Based on that finding alone, OSSI invalidated the school's middle school test scores and has not published the school's test scores to date. Additionally, at that time, OSSI chose not to calculate the school's median growth percentile, which is a really important part of the performance management framework. So this affected their performance management framework scorecard, and that PCSB could not publish an official scorecard for its middle school this year. It also didn't publish a official scorecard for its high school because it's a new program, and this was the first year that they had the 10th graders had tested. It also affects the school's renewal, given the recent amendment to adopt the PMF as its goals and expectations. And so PCSB staff reviewed the record and analyzed the school's performance. And we actually had, we were able to calculate a provisional PMF score based on the data that we had available. We actually had available to us 2013-14 results, proficiency results, and we used those unvalidated and used that to calculate a provisional PMF score. Because we didn't have 2 years of median growth percentile data, we traditionally use 2 years of data to compute a school's MGP every year. And in this case, since we did not have 2013-14 MGP data, we solely used their 2012-13 data. So using those pieces of data to calculate the provisional PMF score, we found that the school scored a 61%, which was well over the standard required for renewal for this year, which was a 45%. Given that performance and given their Tier 1 performance over the past 3 years, PCSB staff found that the school met its goals and academic achievement expectations. A few notes about compliance. There was no finding that the school materially violated the law or its charter. There are a few procurement contracts not submitted, which is really important, and really important that the school complies with that moving forward. And PCSB also found a concern about SPED compliance, mostly because there's very little data on the record about the school's special education compliance performance, because the school is dependent on DCPS to provide that compliance assistance. And so we have very limited data. The data we do have is not strong and shows instances of noncompliance. Given all of this, we do recommend that you vote to renew the school's charter. We do recommend that you put a condition on it, that the school conduct a qualitative assurance review of its special education compliance programming, and that it develop an action plan based on those areas of concern. And staff also urges the school to petition to amend its charter to operate as a local educational agency in regards to special education compliance, through which the school would actually be monitoring and managing its special education programming apart from DCPS. That's it. Questions?
Would you introduce your guests or have them introduce themselves?
I forgot, Jamie. Very sorry.
Been here a couple times. So I'm Jamie Denham, CEO at Paul Public Charter School.
And I'm Roberta Colton, Board Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? None? I'm going to start this end, please. Any questions? No?
Questions.
All right.
Just start with me.
Jamie had a few things to say, if that's okay.
Okay.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity.
Good evening.
I'll start with, again, just noting our board chair, Roberta Colton, our vice chair, Sterling Ward, Manon Butler, our governance committee chair, and our principals are here as well. Over the past 5 years, Paul has garnered many significant accomplishments, and so I'll just name a few. Paul has consistently been one of the highest performing secondary schools in the city. And as a middle school, as you know, Paul was named a Tier 1 school for the first 3 years of the PMF. Over the past 5 years, Paul's middle school has consistently prepared students to enter high-performing college preparatory high schools, including the DCPS selective schools, Banneker, McKinley Tech School Without Walls, independent schools, including St. Anselm's, the Field School, DeMatha, and Sidwell, to name a few. Comparing our 2013 middle school DCCAS data to Deal Middle School, DCPS's highest performing middle school, Paul outperformed Deal in math proficiency when comparing our African American students, our English language learners, our SPED students, and our students who receive free and reduced meals. Because there simply weren't enough seats at high-performing high schools, Paul did boldly amend its charter to serve the high school grades and officially expanded into a CMO that serves both middle school and high school scholars during the 2013-14 school year. Over the past 5 years, Paul sent scholars to college visits across the country and to other nations to explore other cultures in Japan and in Costa Rica. And over the past 5 years, we've done more with less. Natalie Wexler reported last fall that we've operated on an additional $132 more per student in private dollars, and on the high end there are, as you know, public charters that are operating on 10 and 20 times that per student. There are more accomplishments, of course, that we noted in our charter renewal application. Along with these significant accomplishments, we've had some very real and taxing challenges. Most notably in the last year with the growth of our organization as we opened grades 9 and 10 at Paul International High School came very real growing pains. We felt the effects of trying to essentially fly the plane while you build it. We did not meet our own expectations in terms of our student culture, and as leaders, we've reflected on our own practices that contributed to that. We learned a very hard lesson, as Sarah indicated, around test integrity in the middle school as well. So although we did not have any student answers altered or any academic fraud, we did not administer the state assessment with 100% fidelity according to the Test Integrity Act. This isolated issue and even incompetence, as we've noted it, has impacted us greatly. Additional challenges throughout the last 5 years have included our continued struggle to consistently meet all of the needs of our students with IEPs, our English language learners, and our latecomers, those middle school students that come to us in 8th grade who are significantly below grade level in reading or math or both, and those who've never been in an environment where high expectations are essentially the norm. So we've struggled to find and retain highly qualified, strong, and enthusiastic math teachers. We find ourselves grappling with the challenges of serving our gifted students, our homeless students, our students in transition, our students that are grappling with their identity. We have been challenged with compensating our teachers in a manner that's comparable or comparable to the surrounding districts, and we've found it challenging to find great leaders as well. However, our challenges keep us up at night, our challenges keep us motivated, and our challenges keep us urgent. So as we're nearly in the middle of the 2014-15 school year, we are more optimistic than ever that we will rise above our challenges. Now serving 700 students in grades 6 through 11, we are more confident than ever that we are doing the right things to garner the greatest student achievement gains, and we're laser focused on ensuring that every single 11th grader is prepared for college as our inaugural graduating class in 2016. So in closing, I respectfully request that the board vote to renew our charter for an additional 5 years, allowing us the opportunity to continue our mission and the privilege to serve our scholars in the District of Columbia. So Don, I'm ready for your questions. Thank you for that opportunity.
It'll be a hard one, ready. First of all, congratulations on years of excellence.
Thank you.
Very much looking forward to following your continued success in the high school years and really addressing a crucial need of the city. You've consistently been a sector leader and a city leader when it comes to attendance. You're getting maximum points, and it's frequently over 96%. Could you talk about that a little bit? What's your secret, and what might you have to share with the rest of the sector with regard to attendance?
Part of the secret is Linda Long. She is our attendance counselor that loves her job, takes it very seriously, and the kids know and the families know that she's going to harass them essentially to ensure that they come to school. So in addition to that, so we have a great staff person that is dedicated to that particular issue. In addition to that, we have systems in place to provide incentives for scholars. And again, we are super persistent with parents, and at times we really do annoy them. We hope that also scholars are really enjoying the experience and so want to be there, but I think just a combination of strong system, great staff, it's really dedicated to this issue, and it's been something that we've continued to want to grow around a tardy issue, for example. So we're just never satisfied with where we are, so just being persistent about our goals around attendance. So thank you for noting that.
You mentioned, I mean, in spite of the success you've largely had as far as the PMF goes and having the multiple years of Tier 1 performance, and congratulations. And I'll just add, I live in the Paul community, and I think the school has really been a nice stabilizing force as far as having such a high-achieving school, so congratulations on that. But even with that success, you do mention a lot of the challenges that some academics, some otherwise, the students are bringing. And we have a new deputy mayor coming in who's from the charter community, and there's going to be hopefully a lot of attention to citywide efforts to improve education. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on having a more predictable or having more influence over the pipeline of students that you're getting since you started the 6th grade? I'm just curious, what might be some ways to impact the students that you're getting even before they get there, so that you're not year after year having to address the same challenges?
Right. So we've tried to formally partner and informally partner with potential feeder schools. It's been difficult.
Yeah.
There aren't the different models in the city, whether you're talking elementary models that end at 5 or end at 6, or the educational campuses that actually end at 8. It's been really difficult to partner with schools in order to ensure that we are supporting scholars as they transition in, but we have some pockets of success there, right? We've used our summer kind of bridge program or orientation to do some of that work. We've also used just the start of school to do a lot of the work that we need to do to know exactly what we're getting in terms of the scholars and their needs. But it's a very real challenge. So I don't think we've come up with a solution yet, but we've tried quite a few things and are still looking to find the best way to capture what scholars need before they even enter the door, so that we're ready for them.
So what parts of town are the bulk of your students?
Most of our kids are coming from 4 and 5, and then 7 and 8 after that.
4, 5, 7, 8. Okay, and second question, I think there was a recommendation that you consider bringing your special ed operations in-house so as to avoid I guess there's some disconnects between what DCPS is able to do and what the needs are.
Disconnects, yeah.
How would you respond to that recommendation?
So we've considered it, and even before putting in our applications for our renewal, it's been something we've talked about on both a board level as well as with our leaders and our staff. It is something that we want to make sure that we do right, that the implications are so great legally, financially, but we're certainly open to exploring it, and we absolutely have been frustrated with not being our own LEA for SPED.
And so if you
definitely
did
open.
make that change, those dollars, those special education dollars would flow to the
Right.
school, whereas now
Exactly.
they don't. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
Okay.
So, so we are open, I guess, is the short answer. We want to make sure we do it the right way, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Colleagues? That was going to be my question, so.
I'm sorry.
I just
Sorry,
add my
question.
congratulations.
Okay. Thank you.
On a
Thank you, Skip.
Historically good job you guys have done. Are you all ready for a motion?
I do have one other question.
I knew it.
I know. Yeah, and I heard you say that, with the testing, integrity, and protocol issue, that it certainly there weren't any findings
Correct.
of intentional changes to answers. It was a straight marks, and we've traveled down that road before as a
Sure.
board, and I always wonder, are there any lessons learned or advice we could give, you could give other schools, or maybe anything you've learned from that experience so we could avoid this sort of thing happening in the future?
Yeah, so there are many lessons we're taking away from this, just never underestimating the power of practice and really practicing the administration appropriately. So now as we're administering our interims, we are absolutely simulating what that experience will be like when kids take the state assessment. So that's one of the largest pieces. And just, you can't be too planned and too prepared. And I think just ensuring as well that all those that are in key positions around administering are very comfortable with opening the lines of communication if things go wrong. Because we thought we were doing a really good job as we saw challenges that we were saying, hey, Aussie, guess what? We had a problem. We had this
Right.
one issue. We didn't do that enough. And so we want to make sure that we balance this high stakes environment with also this open transparency that is necessary, because mistakes are going to happen. They're going to be things that occur that you just can't anticipate, and just making sure that we absolutely communicate on the front end.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay. Could I get a motion?
I move to approve Paul Public Charter School for another 15 excellent years.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I want to echo Cedar's comments. There has been absolutely great. So thank you to the staff.
I'm going to recuse myself from the next item, the Potomac Prep PCS, and turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Woodruff.
That would be me. Okay, I'm going to invite Naomi DeVoe, our Deputy Director, to come on up, and we are in a 10-year review of the Potomac Preparatory Public Charter School. Any folks from Potomac want to come on up? Why don't we, as they get seated, introduce them, and then we'll have Naomi get started.
So good evening. I'm Naomi DeVoe. I'm the Deputy Director of the Public Charter School Board.
Dr. Marion Whitehood, Principal, Head of School. Nicolette Smith-Bludgeon, Board Chair.
Okay, so I will be introducing to the board their proposals for tonight. There will actually be two staff's recommending two board actions. I first want to give a little background about Potomac Preparatory Public Charter School, and this is their 10-year review. On November 17th, last month, the DC Public Charter School Board voted to initiate charter revocation proceedings against Potomac Preparatory Public Charter School because the school had not met the majority of its goals and the academic achievement expectations. Specifically, PCSB staff on the school in its 10-year review had not met 17 of its goals, partially met 2 of its goals, and fully met 1 goal. Staff also noted that PCSB cannot base a charter continuance on a new leadership staff and or a new strategic plan launched in the school's 10th year, just as the 10th year review began after a decade of poor performance. Moreover, the School Reform Act requires a charter review to be based on the school's historical performance. However, subsequent to this board meeting on subsequent to the board's decision or discussion on November 17th, over a dozen PCSB staff and board members visited Potomac Prep Public Charter School. And on December 10th, 2014, PCSB held a 2.5-hour public hearing at the request of the school. Both the visits and the hearing provided some observational evidence that the school's culture, organization, and administration and aspects of the school's academic program have materially improved over the previous year. In other words, that the turnaround promised by the school is more than a written plan, but is already underway and being implemented. These observations should be caveated. Answers given at the public hearing to the board's questions about details of the academic, professional development, and special education program were vague. The school had provided little actual data to document the impact of the turnaround. Further, the school, in the course of the turnaround, has deviated considerably from the curricular commitments made to PCSB in an MOU that the school signed in September of this year. The School Reform Act provides that prior to the expiration of a school's charter at the end of 15 years, PCSB may revoke a charter if a school has failed to meet its goals. Here, the school has failed to meet the vast majority of its goals. However, the board may wish to exercise its discretion as to whether to revoke the charter. Should the board vote not to revoke the school's charter at this time, staff recommends that the charter be continued with strict conditions for rapid improvement over the next 3 years. Specifically, staff recommends that charter continuance be continued on the following. So I'm going to list the conditions that staff is recommending, and the board, of course, if you do choose to vote this way, can then amend these. That by December 19th, 2014, Potomac Prep sign an amendment to their charter with the following conditions. If the amendment is not signed by this date, the school's charter will be revoked at the end of this school year, the 2014-15 school year. The first condition, the school will achieve all of the following targets for the 2014-15 school year. The school will be within at least 1 percentage point of or exceed the in-seat attendance rate for the charter sector for each of the 3 grade bands for the school. Their grade bands are pre-K, 3 and 4, kindergarten through 2nd grade, and then 3rd through 8th grade, and each of those has a different set of, different averages. The school's average proficiency rate on PARCC in reading and math be at least within 1 standard deviation of the 50th percentile of all DC charter elementary and middle schools for school year 2014-15. 75% of pre-kindergartners in both 3 and 4-year-olds will meet or exceed their average growth goals for the Every Child Ready assessment that the school has chosen as part of the Early Childhood PMF, or the school will be at least within 0.1 point of the 2015 DC charter average in each of the 3 class domains that are emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. 50% of so that's an either or for the pre-K. And then the fourth goal would be 50% of kindergarten through 2nd grade students will meet or exceed typical growth in reading and math on the NWA MAP assessment, which is also part of their early childhood goals within the PMF. If the school does not achieve all these targets, and all of them for grades pre-K through 8, the school will relinquish its charter at the end of the 2015-16 school year. So that would be the first benchmark, and then the second benchmark would be for the next school year. The school will achieve all the following targets for the 2015-16 school year, and now we would earn at least 50 on the 2015-16 elementary middle PMF, because remember this year we're holding everyone harmless to the PMF. The school will be within at least 1 percentage point of or exceed the in-seat attendance rates for the charter sector for each of the 2 grade level bands for the school year of pre-kindergarten and kindergarten that are not covered in the elementary middle PMF. And then also for those grades, it's the same as the previous year. 75% of the pre-kindergartners will meet or exceed their average growth goals, or they will be within 0.1 point of the DC charter average for the 3 class domains, and that they will have 50% of their kindergarten through 2nd graders will meet or exceed the typical growth in NWA MAP, assessment for reading and math. Assuming they make those goals, which we think are reasonable, then the third year, they would be held to 55 percentage points on the elementary middle PMF in the third year, so 2016-17. And then the other goals are actually the same as the previous year, so I won't read them again. If the school does not achieve all these targets, the school will relinquish its charter at the end of the 17-18 school year. And then by March 15th, 2015, the school must submit a petition to amend its charter to reflect the current educational, operational, legal structure, including the revised curriculum and instruction. This petition will form the basis of a more comprehensive charter amendment. So in addition to the performance benchmarks that we set forward, we also recognize that the current charter is out of compliance, so we would need to get that into compliance by March 15th of this school year. If the school, and in that, the Potomac Prep amended petition must update its goals and student academic achievement expectations so that they are rigorous and relevant, and the goals must incorporate the conditions for these 3 school years. And then if the school fails to submit this petition by the required date, the school will relinquish its charter at the end of the 2014-15 school year. PCSB will conduct a qualitative site review of the school in both 14-15 and 15-16 school year to assess whether the school is meeting its goals and academic achievement expectations, the conditions of this agreement, as well as whether it's meeting the following key strategies in its described turnaround plan. That includes improved student literacy, develop support learning environments, accelerated math achievement, improved special education instruction and compliance, and the use of data cycles to inform instruction. And these are all elements within their written turnaround plan. If PCSB staff concludes that through the QSR that the school is not following the above strategies as outlined in their turnaround plan, it may recommend to the board that the school's charter be revoked at the end of that school year. We'd also just like to add that PCSB may, at its sole discretion, elect to waive any of the above conditions if it has concerns with the reliability of the assessment mechanism. For year 1, PCSB may substitute the following condition if it has concerns with the reliability of the PARCC assessment. That 70% of its 3rd through 8th grade students will score at or above the 40th percentile of NWEA MAP, national average, and or meet exceed the spring typical growth target in math and reading. So that's sort of the list of all the conditions. It's quite a lot. Should the board decide, we would suggest, the staff would suggest 2 motions. The board would make 2 motions, one to not revoke the charter, and then the second would be to approve with these conditions and any others you would like to add or change.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before we get to any questions by the board members, I'd like to recognize Principal Whitehood and Chairperson Smith-Blagin. And I want to ask if you have had an opportunity to sort of digest. I realize it's a comprehensive set of conditions. Maybe say a few words about your understanding of the conditions and anything else you'd like to say about the school.
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is obviously having the opportunity to even have this discussion about conditions. I think that's an important place to start. It's been I think, a long journey for the school over the last 10 years, and obviously the last year has been especially, I think, aggressive in terms of turnaround. So, yes, I've had an opportunity to digest. That's the short answer. And I think it continues having an aggressive turnaround. I think that's part of the plan. If we were taking things very slowly, I don't think we'd see much change. So, for me, the work really begins the next day after, if in fact the board sees fit to continue with conditions, that's when the real work begins. I think the journey just continues in trying to every day make sure that we can provide the highest quality education environment for our kids. So that's my initial reaction.
I'd like to thank all the board members for visiting over the past 2 weeks. My kids really liked having you there, and the teachers too. You did a lot for you validated who they are and their self-esteem, as well as the parents. And as you can see here, my leadership team joins us, as well as the parents in the rear and board members. We're committed to this. I firmly believe in that a good principal, that a good head of school, that a good administrative team has to be well-trained and formally, and has to be committed to the work. It's a 24/7 job. I promise to do my very best, and as Naomi has suggested in her conditions, I will make sure that we meet them. It's going to be tough, but I believe we can do it. Thank you.
And I want to say staff believes they can do it too, from what we saw. So we had a lot of staff go in, and these conditions are things we have faith that the school can do.
Yeah, and just we'll get into any questions we have from board members, but I just want to extend my appreciation to the board staff, as well as our executive director, for putting together what I think is a pretty comprehensive and thoughtful set of conditions across attendance, across school classroom observations, and the quantitative measures that we see with Park and the PMF. I think it shows the seriousness with which we look at this issue. It's very difficult to grapple with charter revocation, so I think this is a very good set of conditions. And with that, we'll start on this end. Any questions? Soifer? Got a question? Okay, good.
Let me start off by saying I look forward to supporting continuance with conditions. You recall at our hearing, I started my questions by really saying that I wanted to focus on the past 6 months, and that was a critical time frame to me. But I'd like to ask you now, looking forward, should continuance be granted, both of you in your leadership roles. There was a lot to digest in all of the conditions, so I don't need you to drill down in each of them. But generally speaking, what can this board and I and my colleagues expect from you in terms of how you approach addressing those conditions and looking at the future?
First and foremost, I want to say that we're going to be focusing on our NWEA scores. When we separated from Lighthouse, we didn't really have our contract in place for NWEA, so we went right into ANET, and we did A1 and A2. Now that we have that separation agreement with Lighthouse and the NWA confirmed, we're going to be beefing that up. And I love NWEA. We're all going to be trained, if not trained, on that, and so you will be able to see, because it's so developmental. It's perfect for our students. So you will be seeing the growth that we are expected to make and that the parents want to see. In January, we're having an educational rally. I hope you're able to come. We intend to have all politicians, parents, children coming to make a pledge that they will come to Saturday school, that they will participate in all of our online interventions, and that they will be thoroughly 100% committed, because it's not just about the school, it's about the parents and the students as well. I think when you came, you saw a much different culture. When the culture is sturdy, you can grow things, and that's what we intend to do. Did I answer your question? Thank you.
I think from a board perspective, the two things that I want to focus on, obviously, is making sure that Dr. Whitehead has what she needs. When you think about a board, you think about clearing out the barriers and making sure that they have enough resources to do the job. And so for us, I think that's at the top of the list. I think the second focus really is on making sure that we are engaged in knowing, as Dr. Whitehead and her team go through the process, that we are right there in lockstep. So understanding what the issues are, understanding what the opportunities are, and being able to support her and advise her and support the team. So I think under that kind of umbrella, she can do this job. And I think it's going to be difficult, again, in terms of the aggressiveness of the conditions, but I think with that kind of support, at least she and her team knows that they are not doing this by themselves, that as a whole, we are there to provide that support.
Don't let the microphone go too far. And my other question is, I'd like to congratulate you not just on the school and the faculty, but on your board. I think your board really did a persuasive job building confidence that these are goals that can be achieved. It was a little I mean, no one has, fortunately, none of us have a world of experience doing hearings and processes like the ones we've done. But I did get the distinct impression throughout the whole process of the last month that that there was the focus on quality was clear. The focus on qualitative measures was clear. But I didn't hear as much, and didn't hear and see as much about specific data points. Certainly, we've talked a lot about them tonight. And I wonder if you could reflect on the role of data, whatever sorts of data, in your boards and your leadership's deliberation moving forward, and whether or not I'm right in thinking that specific data points didn't seem to be as close to the service and to the heart of the discussion as I might have expected. And I wonder moving forward if that reflects procedures or attitudes or approaches that you think that you plan to learn by or continue, or what your approach is based on a lot of the data points that we've heard about from our leadership team and certainly a lot in the past few weeks. But are there different approaches to using data? And you mentioned NWA at some specific points, and how that might guide your thinking and actions moving forward.
I'm a firm believer in data. I believe that we need non-academic as well as academic data. And in our case, it was a little shaky because, I call it raggedy, because we had just separated from Lighthouse, so we're getting our firm footing. But data drives everything. Yeah. I want my people, our people, to have it buckled to their hip, on their arm, whatever. They need to look at the data in order to make decisions. So you will be seeing some strong data points.
From a board perspective, I think you don't stop at the quantitative, right? You want to hear the story behind the numbers. And I think for me, that is big, sort of understanding what the trends are. Why did it go up? Why did it go down? So those are the kinds of questions that I think are important to ask on a board level at our board meetings. And so I think we spend a lot of time, Dr. Whitehead makes sure we have a lot of information around data. And I think we spend more time on program and data than we have historically on other things. And it has, though, been an education around the importance of data in day-to-day work. And I think for us as a board, it really is embracing that and understanding it so that we would be able to guide moving forward. So it really is not just stopping at the number, did we meet this, did we meet that, but really understanding what drove that. Why did we not meet it, or why did we meet it? Should we make a correction, or should we keep moving forward in the path that we're going on? Because that's really what data does, as Dr. Whitehead said. It really just drives your decision making. And so starting that from the top down, the board, school leadership, teachers, I think is key and important, and that, in my mind, is the approach that we need to take moving forward.
And I must say, I don't think we would have had the data that we have if it weren't for EdOps jumping right in, being a part of it before I even was hired. So that has helped us along the way, but we're going to expand that, you will see.
I'm going to move it on to see if we have any additional questions on this side of the dais. Rick, Sarah? No? Okay, I believe the motion that we have on the table is to vote on rescinding the charter revocation recommendation. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay, so do we have a motion?
I make a motion not to revoke.
Okay.
I'll second.
So we are voting all in favor of the motion to not revoke the charter. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations. And we do have a second motion. If I get this right, it is to approve continuance with conditions, as we just spent the last 10 or 15 minutes discussing it. So do we have a motion on the continuance?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the continuances.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of the conditions? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations again. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And thank you for being good host on all the many visits we made to your school. Appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to our chair.
I was not able to participate in this, but I want to add now that you voted, my congratulations to the Potomac. Look forward to great things from them in the future. So the next item is another revocation item. This last one was after a hearing had been held, and this next item is to consider revoking a charter. So what I'd like to do, consider initiating revoking the charter. I'd like to do is have the staff report, and then we'll do questions and answers, and then any representatives from the board, from the LAA, if you want to make some, a short report, and then we could have some questions and answers. And then if this board so desires and votes to initiate, you would have the option to request a hearing and so forth. So this is at the beginning of the process they just went through. So do you want to do the staff report?
Okay. So I'm going to give the overview of the staff recommendation to the board to initiate charter revocation proceedings against the Dorothy I. Height Community Academy Public Charter School, which I'll refer to as the school or CAPS throughout the rest of this report. Through recent litigation, PCSB staff has learned that CAPS has engaged in a pattern of physical mismanagement and violated the School Reform Act as a result of the school's board breach of its fiduciary duties. The School Reform Act authorizes PCSB to revoke a school's charter in such cases. PCSB determination of physical mismanagement is primarily based on the findings issued on the October 27, 2014 report by D.C. Superior Court Judge Neil Kravitz in a civil case filed on behalf of the District of Columbia by its Office of the Attorney General, or OAG. PCSB staff finds that the pattern of physical mismanagement included the misuse of public funds in two ways. First, CAPS paid two different entities, Community Action Partners and Charter School Management LLC, which I'll refer to as the management company, and CAPS staff for the same services over the course of at least 2 years. Second, the school paid an unreasonable amount to the management company pursuant to the management agreement given the services the management company performed. Further, staff finds the school has committed a violation of the School Reform Act because the school's board breached its fiduciary duties by permitting the school to make these double payments and to pay the management company an unreasonable amount. So I'll go and to give a little bit of a background on the OAG case. On June 2nd, 2014, OAG filed a civil lawsuit against the management company and Mr. Amos seeking declaratory relief for alleged violations of the D.C. Nonprofit Corporation Statute. The complaint alleged that the school improperly diverted its operating revenues derived from the public funds to the benefit of the management company and Mr. Amos. On July 23, 2014, OAG filed an amended complaint to add the school, CAPS, as a defendant. On August 20th, OAG filed a motion for a preliminary injunction in which it sought to halt further payments from the school to either the management company or Mr. Amos. On September 2014, the court held a 6-day hearing during which all the parties presented testimony. On October 27th, 2014, the court granted OAG's motion for a preliminary injunction. In ruling on OAG's motion for the preliminary injunction, the court made a number of factual findings regarding the relationship between the school and the management company that demonstrate that the school paid two entities for the same services and paid an unreasonable amount for these services. On November 25th, the defendants filed notices of appeal of the court's decision. Pending the appeal, the preliminary injunction stands and no payments can be made to the management company. The lawsuit on the merits of the OAG's case, namely the defendant's violation of the D.C. Nonprofit Corporation Act, continues with the time period for discovery extended through April 27th of 2015. So that's sort of an overview of the court case. Fiscal mismanagement. Staff finds that the school's public funds were badly managed in two ways based on the judge's ruling. PCSB based on the judge's ruling, PCSB records and the management agreement between the school and the management company. The school was paying salaries and the management company for the same functions over the course of at least 2 years and paid an unreasonable amount to the management company pursuant to the management agreement given the services management company performed. So I'm going to go through in 2012 exactly what was in the management agreement and then what was also paid to staff at Community Academy Public Charter School. So maintenance. In 2012, the school and the management company operated under a 2007 management agreement, and pursuant to this agreement, maintenance was covered. And the management company was responsible for the management of the cleaning, maintenance, and operation of the school facility. However, according to submitted documents to PCSB, CAPS had a facilities manager and 20 custodians on staff. IT services. The management company was responsible for the development of a technology program as part of its educational program, including the acquisition and installation of devices and equipment such as computers. But the school has a director of IT, a director of educational technology, IT support assistant, and technical support assistant on staff. Food services. The management company was responsible for providing food services for CAPS in accordance with the applicable law. But CAPS had a food service manager and 10 food service workers on staff. Special education services. The management company was responsible for overseeing the provision of special education services to students who attend CAPS in a manner that complies with the federal and District of Columbia law and applicable regulations, and could subcontract all or a portion of these services to a subcontractor. But CAPS had 3 special education coordinators on staff. English language learner services. The management company was to provide for appropriate bilingual and/or English for speakers of other languages services to the limited English proficient students and could subcontract with services or to a subcontractor. But CAPS, the school, had a director of ESOL, or LCD, which is linguistically and culturally diverse, and 8 teachers of ESL-ESOL on staff. 6, personnel services. The management company was to evaluate, assign, discipline, and recommend termination of the school personnel, could subcontract to do so, and was required to develop personnel policies. However, CAPS had a director of human resources, an HR coordinator, an HR generalist, and a human resources payroll coordinator on staff. That concludes the double payment in 2012. In 2013, the school and the management company signed a new management agreement. Under this agreement, many of the same functions were covered by both the management company and at the school. So bear with me as I sort of repeat some of the same things, but I think it's important to hear. Maintenance. The management company was responsible for managing of the cleaning, maintenance, and operation of the school facilities, but CAPS had 3 custodians on staff. IT services. The management company was responsible for the development of technology program as part of the educational program, including the acquisition and installation of devices and equipment such as computers. But CAPS had a director of IT, director of educational technology, IT support assistant, and technical support assistant all on staff. Food services. The management company was responsible for providing food services for the school in accordance with applicable law, but CAPS had a food service manager and 10 food service workers on staff. Special education. services. The management company was to oversee the provision of special education services to students who attend the school in a manner that complies with federal and District of Columbia law and applicable regulations, and could subcontract all or any portion of these services to a subcontractor, but CAPS had 2 special education coordinators on staff. English language learner services. The management company was to provide for appropriate bilingual and/or English for speakers of other languages services to the limited English proficient students, but CAPS had 8 teachers of ESOL on staff. Personnel services. The management company was to evaluate, assign, discipline, and recommend termination of CAPS personnel, could subcontract do so, and was required to develop personnel policies, but CAPS had an HR manager, an HR generalist, and a human resources payroll coordinator on staff. And lastly, in this new management agreement, they had instructional support where the management company was to provide training in its methods, curriculum, program, and technology to all teaching personnel on a regular and continual basis, orientation of new teaching personnel prior to the commencement of each school year, an ongoing professional development program throughout the school year, but CAPS had 5 instructional coaches on staff. So despite this double payment, I'd like to just talk for a second about sort of the funding. So for fiscal year 2012, which was the first year of the double payment, the total revenues for CAPS was $32,507,469. The management fee was just over $2 million, representing 6.3% of the total. Fiscal year 2013, the total revenues for the school went down to $30,792,755. The management fee went up to $2,372,970, representing 7.7% of the total revenue. And for fiscal year 2014, the revenues, again, total went down to $29,597,571, and the management fee also went down slightly to just over $2 million at $2,100,000, representing 7.1% of the total. In light of the double payment just described, CAPS paid an unreasonable amount to the management agreement pursuant to the management agreement given the services the management agreement performed. The School Reform Act establishes that members of the school's Board of Trustees are fiduciary for the school. Despite the legal requirements, the record established that CAPS board did not meet its responsibility and did not act with reasonable care and diligence in protecting the school's public funds. There is evidence of carelessness on the part of the board with respect to its oversight of the implementation of the 2007 management contract and the decision to enter the 2013 contract. For example, in 2007, CAPS failed to hold the management company accountable for providing the salary and benefit information it was required to provide to the school. With respect to the 2013 contract, the CAPS board selected the management company to continue its management services based on a proposal that lacked a budget, lacked salary information, or resumes of key employees. And this new contract removed all previous disclosure requirements for the management company staff, effectively severing the relationship between the management company's actual costs and the amount of the management fee. While the CAPS board members may not have acted in bad faith or with any direct knowledge of the few services that the management company was providing to the school, the failure to manage this contract and the attendant expenditures of funds is not reasonable care and diligence in handling a school's public funds. In fact, Judge Kravitz stated that their conduct was an abdication of the responsibility of the board of this publicly funded institution to limit the compensation to reasonable amounts and otherwise to safeguard the institution's public funds and resources. The last thing I'll say is just a little bit around timing. Some of this factual, why now? Some of this factual information forming the basis for revocation was revealed in the sworn testimony or witness testimony and the judge's factual findings issued to us in October. And the staff also wanted to recommend initiating revocation now to ensure that any revocation decision was made in time for parents to be informed before the common lottery deadline for this age span, which is March, I think, 2nd of this year. So that's why we're introducing this now. And that ends my long report.
Okay, thank you. We'll have questions from the board. Don?
Thanks. How long has this school been overpaying for services?
So it looks like 5 years. It looks like the judge found that since 2009 to 2011, the management company had only 3 employees, Mr. Amos, his wife, and his stepson. In 2011 to 2013, 2 maintenance employees were added, but then back to 2009, CAPS was paid over $1 million. And for those 3 employees. And in 2010, the amounts paid to the management company nearly doubled to $2 million.
Are there any nepotism rules around hiring family members? I noted that Ken Amos's wife and stepson were on the payroll.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to specific rules about nepotism, but we have fairly clear standards for when schools contract. They're required to very transparently disclose any personal or business relationships with companies they contract with.
Okay. Do we know if did we receive back when that
Conflict of
occurred?
interest. We'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Whether there was.
And the second question, I'm reading through all of this, I noted that with the court case, which is my understanding is separate from this, there's an appeal that's been filed, but would that be separate from our own deliberations around the fiscal management or mismanagement?
Yes.
Okay.
This is about the school. This is not about the court case right now.
Okay,
We
I
are
just wanted
talking
to
about
make sure we were
what
clear
we
on that.
used is the evidence from the court case and our own findings. But we feel that there is a case here, and we are moving forward right now. We're recommending that.
Okay.
Naomi, thank you for the detail. Could you spend a few moments explaining why this was not identified, or the situation is not identified by the Public Charter School Board earlier?
Yeah. So we were aware of the management contract with the school and the management company, and we had concerns about it. But one of our concerns was that we knew the management company only had one client, and that was the school, and we couldn't understand from the school's board why it needed a management company, why it couldn't do it internally. We also had concerns about the 2013 rebid of the management contract. As I said, in my report, they were asked to rebid, and then it was they gave 1 week to collect responses to their proposals, and they only received then one response, and that was from the management company, and then that response did not have a whole lot of details as what the management company, who the staffers were. But it was really only after the lawsuit was filed and the documents were produced that we learned that the management company only employed Mr. Amos and his immediate family. We had no way of knowing that beforehand, and so that's why now is when we're realizing that there was double payment going on.
But Rick wasn't on the board when we first started meeting on this, but I specifically remember personally asking for financial information from that board, and we were told, no, that's the management company, and we don't have we can't give you access to that. So that explains why we didn't know a lot of the details, because for a long period of time, they just said, no, we either don't have the information or we can't get it for you. So it took the judge to get it for us. Any other? Yeah.
And so, obviously, potential concerns about fiscal mismanagement are a very grave issue that we take very seriously, but I'm also deeply concerned about the students in the school and the school as an academic institution. Do we know, or is there any evidence of whether this damaged or harmed the school or the students in any way?
So we can't know for certain how the school was harmed by the expenditures to the management company of millions of dollars over the course of this time. We do know that 2 of its 6 campuses were closed during this time for academic reasons, where one of the campuses had some under 20% of its students proficient. Other reasons, maybe Michaela wants to talk more about.
I can speak to sort of the fiscal situation overall. As you may know, something like half of the schools that PCSB has ever closed have closed because of fiscal mismanagement, obviously putting the students at risk of educational disruption. In 2013, which is the most recent year for which we have a published financial and audit review, which refers to our financial scorecard for schools, we identified CAPS, the school, as one of our lowest financial performers. This means that we've identified them as being at risk of financial failure, and that's when we step in for increased meetings, more targeted expectations around fiscal improvement. And I can speak a little bit more about that if it would be helpful. I'll also note that the school's bond rating was lowered 4 notches by Standard & Poor's, one of the well-respected bond rating agencies, from a BBB- to a single B+.
Any other questions or discussion? Again, this is just the preliminary to the question of whether we initiate revocation.
I guess I would love to hear a little more from Michaela about the school's financial situation, given
Sure.
the concerns you raised.
So, as I mentioned, 2013, that would be school year 2012-13, is the last year for which we have a public and finalized report that has been vetted by the school. That year raised significant concerns about the financial management. They had a deficit of almost $3 million. Our standard that we publish and that we tell schools we are expecting is to have a net zero, no deficit. Ideally, you should have a surplus, and they were at negative $2.8 million. They had a negative cash flow of $450,000. Again, our standard is 0. They should be breaking even. Their debt service ratio, that's the percent of their revenue that they have to spend to cover their debt payments, was above 10%. 10% is our threshold for being concerned. Between 2012 and 2013, their assets declined by nearly half. Their current assets, what they have on hand for the short term, were just half of what liabilities they had for the short term. And most glaringly, they ended fiscal year 2013 with just 1 day of cash on hand. We set our standard at least 30 days. And I will note that there's a consistent pattern of alarmingly low cash on hand, with even as far back as 2009, the school never ended a year with more than 10 days of cash on hand. And as I said, 30 days is our expected minimum. These are all standards that are published and available to the school up front. While we haven't finalized our report for the most recent school year, 2013-14, I can speak a little bit to some improvements they made, but continued concerns. They had a positive operating surplus and a positive cash flow, both good signs, but their current liabilities, their short-term debts that they owed, were still in excess of their current assets. Again, they had less than a month's worth of cash on hand, though it was a significant improvement. They had almost a month's worth of cash on hand. However, when we dive in, we can see that all of these financial improvements, and this goes to your original question, Sarah, were done by cutting expenses to their program, not to their management fee whatsoever. So they actually cut $5 million from their program expenses, or nearly $2,000 per student, without cutting the management fee at all. It remained over $2 million last year.
Let me just clarify. I think, according to the memo, the management fee was cut by about $100,000, but the overall expenditures on management
We're still over $2 million.
On the management company remained over $2 million, and the overall expenditures by the school on management actually grew, while the program expenses were cut by almost $5 million.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Let me invite any representatives from CAPS or the management company. If you want to speak, and while I am known to you and you are known to me, would you identify yourself, please?
Yeah. My name is A. Scott Bolden. I'm a partner with Reed Smith here in the city, and I represent the nonprofit Community Academy. That is the subject of the staff report and the public charter school that you are considering to begin revocation proceedings on.
And my name is Frederick D. Cook, Jr. I am counsel for the management company in the civil litigation. I'm counsel for Mr. Kent Amos in the civil litigation. I'm counsel for Mr. Amos in his capacity as the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Academy Public Charter School.
Thank you.
If I may, let me begin my remarks by debunking just a couple of comments staff has made, and then I'll go to a broader piece. It is simply untrue that for 5 years that the management company had only 3 employees and they were all family members. Even your own staff report doesn't confirm that. I think it says for 2012 and 2013, even in your own staff report. In connection to the bond rating, it is true that it was reduced from A- to B+, but I would hardly argue that that is a significant evidence of financial mismanagement. The numbers quoted by staff regarding the financial circumstances of the school, I'd love to see those numbers because our numbers don't reflect that, and I'll be more than happy to produce those at the appropriate time because we have clean audits and have every year. This school is operating in the black. We have clean audits. We filed our accounting reports and financial reports on a timely basis. The pattern and practice of fiscal mismanagement seems to deal with this management contract. And despite what staff has reported, there are competing or documents that would offer a powerful rebuttal to those misrepresentations. Staff says that the Court of Appeals case and the litigation isn't relevant, probative, or material. That's my paraphrasing. Well, how can that be, since the whole staff report,
Well, I missed that.
your whole staff report,
No, I missed when the staff said it wasn't relevant.
she said that they were separate. Therefore, that means this is irrelevant. Now, they are separate proceedings, but your own staff report relies heavily on the judge's comments. Okay? Now, it's a preliminary hearing. There were no conclusions of law or findings of fact found by this court. These were comments made by the judge from the bench, not included in the court order. He made no findings of fact and he made no conclusions of law because it's a preliminary injunction. That trial is going to continue. There's going to be depositions. There are going to be more witnesses, more documents, more everything. And in my 27 years of practicing law, I can guarantee you that a decision for a preliminary injunction is just that, preliminary. And the permanent injunction, where there'll be findings of fact, conclusions of law, will certainly rule the day because they will be included in the order. That's why it's called a preliminary injunction. And while you as a board, I fully understand and appreciate you all's concern about the judge's comments. But the judge's comments, based on his preliminary thoughts, and I'm not splitting hairs here, is far different in the context of whether he is going to issue a preliminary injunction or whether the school is fiscally mismanaged. It's a far cry from it, as well as whether the board breached their fiduciary duty
But I think it comes down to this. Is there a pattern and practice of financial mismanagement? Financial mismanagement is not even defined in any of your rules or the School Reform Act. Not defined. Breach of fiduciary duty is not defined. I don't know how this board is going to have a hearing if you vote in the negative tonight and allow us and give us our due process rights if this organization doesn't even have a definition nor a statutory definition of it. Now, in the staff report, after a meeting today, it added that the mismanagement, financial mismanagement, had to do with GAAP, General Accepted Accounting Principles. That's nowhere in the statute, and I can tell you that was added to the staff report. It simply was, because it wasn't there during our earlier discussions. Now, my ultimate point is this. On behalf of the Community Academy, I am asking this board to stand down and to reject staff's recommendation, at least for now, because for the following reasons, okay? As I said, the staff report relies almost exclusively on the judge's comments that are completely preliminary. And while his comments were disturbing and giving your fiduciary duty, I'd be concerned about it, but I would take his comments in the totality of the context of your duties and responsibilities and what the reality is of the Community Academy. This judge sat through 6 days of testimony, unlike what we would get at an informal hearing if you were voted to start these proceedings, okay? This decision, as I said, was preliminary. The order executed by the judge contains none of this information, and as I indicated, the permanent injunction hearing is still to come. Now, the most telling piece about what happened at the trial and the judge's decision to grant that preliminary injunction was that the judge fashioned a remedy for all of this. The judge's number one issue was whether the management company, in my opinion, based on my review of of the transcript, was that he was concerned about the management company being paid $1 million, right? He wasn't concerned about the school's performance because there was no evidence that the school was failing in any way. There was no evidence of the kids not being educated. There was no evidence that the school was not fully operational. There was no evidence or testimony that in some way, shape, or form that anyone could look at Community Academy and say that the remedy for this contract that may have been a bad contract, that the remedy should be revocation. Even the judge who sat through this, not an informal hearing, but he sat, he listened to testimony, he received evidence, he heard oral argument, he listened to witnesses, and you know what his remedy was? Because your staff's not going to tell you that, but you probably know it. The remedy was that he judicially terminated the management contract because he didn't agree with it. And you probably don't agree with it if I listen to what the staff reported. But more importantly, what he did was he allowed the same management company and those individuals to be hired as staff for the school. And right now, everyone who was connected to the management company, whether they were maintenance, teachers, performance, administrators, you name it, are now employees of the very school that your staff is recommending that you shut down as the only remedy that they could bring to you. There are a ton of remedies that this board could do as opposed to shutting down a high-performing school, a financially solvent school. Other than this contract, what did the judge do? He made them employees, he terminated that management contract, and he essentially cured what ails your staff, and what you believe ails your staff. He cured it, because that was the only issue. Now, once you make them employees and you pay them a reasonable salary, and if you look at our documents, and our profit and loss statement says we're in the black, that teachers are getting paid, employees are getting paid, everybody's getting paid on time, there's money in the bank. A lot of the financial challenges we have is because we have that $25 million bond issue. That might bring our numbers down. But this organization is a fully functional, financially sound organization, other than that contract. And that contract is no longer in place. So there's tons of stuff we could do to cure it. The judge went a long way in curing that.
I'm going to ask if
Yeah.
if your partner has anything to add, because I think we're running down on time, and should we elect to initiate revocation, you'll have tons of time to make your
Well,
arguments.
Mr. Chairman, I think everything I've said has been in rebuttal to the staff's
I understand.
recommendation.
I
Now,
understand that.
if I'm not going to be allowed to rebut that, at least in my public comments, then I'll have to accept that. But I think it would be appropriate to let me continue to rebut
How much
them.
more time do you think you have?
2 minutes,
Great.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
The court had an opportunity to put the school in receivership. Didn't do that. He was most concerned about preserving the school, the students, and the staff in place, which is why he fashioned that remedy. More importantly, any decision to start this revocation process would be painfully immature. For example, we have not done the trial, but the case is pending on appeal. What happens if the case gets reversed and sent down, or the decision by the lower court is rejected by the Court of Appeals, and by the time it's reversed, whatever that ruling will be, this board may have made a negative decision already, and the horse essentially would be out of the barn. There'd be nothing left to fight for. I think that's preliminary and inappropriate. I've talked about the financial performance. We can produce those documents. The school's performance itself, it's a top tier 2 school. You know the statistics. It was recently received a 15-year accreditation until 2001 by the Middle States Association of Commissions. So the school is performing. They're financially performing. And in conclusion, I think that this board has a duty and responsibility as a regulator to look at other options, to not begin this process, to allow a board-to-board meeting, to fashion a remedy short of revocation, because essentially, I think if you shut down a school, even if you disagree with these representations, if you shut down a school that is performing at this level, even if you only believe half of it, you are essentially sending a message to the public charter school community that you can be financially sound, you can have one bad contract, or allegedly bad contract, and your charter could be taken. 1,600 students can be displaced. Teachers and employees will become unemployed simply because and after a judge provided a remedy that terminated that contract. I think there are better alternatives. We'd love to work with you all on a better alternative, given all the positive things that's going on at the school, and I hope you will give every consideration to doing that versus taking a very drastic action and revoking the charter, given the work and the families and the kids that be affected by it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, do you have any?
Sure. Thank you. I want to tag on to everything that my friend and brother, Mr. Bolden, said, but add the following. I'm the only person in this room that sat through all 6.5 days of that hearing. I'm the only person in this room who knows what the judge did from firsthand experience. I am extremely disappointed in the staff report in terms of how pejorative it is and one-sided it is and inaccurate it is. It is inaccurate because the judge's hour-and-a-half-long statement were a statement of reasons why he was granting the preliminary injunction. It was not findings of fact, as your staff report says. That is patently untrue. A law student, first-year law student, understands that a preliminary injunction is not composed of findings of fact. It's a preliminary decision. It's much like a grand jury finding where there's probable cause to go forward, not that it is in fact proven beyond a reasonable doubt or by preponderance of the evidence. The burden in the preliminary injunction hearing is on the government to establish the elements of the four-part test. We had no burden. We had none whatsoever. We had no obligation to rebut those things said by the government. So the fact is you have a one-sided presentation where one side is trying to hit a target and the other side is trying to keep it from getting there. The staff report totally neglects the reality of what a preliminary injunction hearing is and attempts to convince you that these were facts that were found by the judge, and they are not. Secondly, as Mr. Bolden said, at the preliminary injunction hearing, the government was asking for a number of things. The Office of the Attorney General. They were asking to have the contract voided. They were asking to have the school barred from making any payments to the management company or to Mr. Amos. They were asking to have the Mr. Amos or the management company barred from accepting any money from the school. The judge's remedy in the preliminary injunction largely gave the government most of what they wanted. The judge did not actually terminate the contract, but he did effectively bar the school from paying any more money to the management company or to Mr. Amos and those organizations accepting any money. The judge said Mr. Amos had done good work. Your staff doesn't point that out. The judge said Mr. Amos had done good work for the school. And in fact, that is why he told the school, you can employ Mr. Amos if you choose to. This management company situation goes away, but you can employ Mr. Amos because he's done a good job for the school. You can employ the former employees of the management company. Your staff report doesn't mention that. Today, the former employees of the management company, of which there were 11 and not 3, are employed by the school. Mr. Amos is employed by the school. As Mr. Bolden said, the preliminary injunction order is on appeal before the D.C. Court of Appeals. My co-counsel in that case has asked for an expedited disposition of that appeal. It may or may not happen, because when you ask the Court of Appeals, you get what you get. But if the Court of Appeals determines that the judge's preliminary injunction ruling was inaccurate, inapposite, the wrong thing to do at that particular point in time, this revocation proceeding having gone forward will be premised on something that the judge was wrong about, something that the staff has no independent knowledge of. They are simply putting their arms around an order and a very long statement of reasons for the order and adopting those things as fact. Those things are not facts. They have not been established. And that means, in my view, that this board, if it were to go forward with the revocation proceeding, in order to comply with any sort of notion of due process, would have to have its own fact-finding hearing, where those facts would be proven or not to the satisfaction of this body and to the relevant legal standards that are applicable. This dual track of this administrative proceeding and the civil litigation to litigate essentially the same issues is inefficient. And it is fraught with danger, because if you embrace these findings, and it turns out that the Court of Appeals says the judge is wrong, then you're standing on air. You've got nothing to stand on. Now, you may be right, you may be wrong, but you can't know at this point because it's on appeal. So the remedy that the judge put in place, and the potential remedy of the litigation, if you will, which in some ways the government is still pursuing a remedy that would require the management company to return money to the school that the government argues was improperly paid to the management company. Now, that may or may not be proven at the end of the litigation, but the remedy to the school in terms of its fiscal harm is that that money will be returned if the court believes that it should be returned. This body can't order that. You don't have the power to do that. But again, it seems inefficient for a school that is operating in the black. It's interesting that your staff talks about the bond rating, but doesn't talk about the previous year's charm reports where they don't make any mention of financial irregularity or financial impropriety vis-a-vis the school. So a school that hasn't had this sort of history, a school that has had fairly good performance with respect to most of its schools, and clearly there have been some issues with two of the schools that were close. So that's a fact you can't get around. So I'm concerned that I don't understand how it is that without a standard in the statute, what is financial mismanagement? What is that? It's not defined anywhere in the statute. And how are you going to decide what financial mismanagement is when somebody hasn't taken the money and run away to Havana? When somebody hasn't taken the money and bought something that has caused the school not to be able to pay the rent or to buy books or computers or pay teachers? Right. When that hasn't happened, where can you hang your financial mismanagement hook on? Where's that hat? Where's the hook you're hanging the hat on? So if you guys are going to make it up, okay, but I think that's problematic. So I think, as Mr. Bolton said, that there is, much as there was with Potomac Prep, there is much to be concerned about from a board perspective. I don't argue that. But there's also a very wide area of of curative, of remedy, that is short of revocation and is much more efficient. But that's your prerogative. I'm arguing as an advocate that I think that this whole road down in revocation is nonsensical. I think if the board's concern is this thing that happened that isn't good, how do we fix it? Then there's a way to fix that. If you believe that these members of this board are devils that have horns and can't be salvaged, there's no salvation for them, then yeah, you ought to put a bullet in all of them. I don't believe that the record supports that sort of conclusion. But you do what you want.
So, I appreciate it, thank you. We may have a few questions. I'd like to just make a couple of statements based on what my reading, and I'm not an attorney. I think the judge had a different task. In some ways, I think our task is more straightforward. Our task is, do we think there's been a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, however we define it, in the past? It's irrelevant whether the school is a Tier 1 school. It's irrelevant whether the school has gotten accolades from the President of the United States. If there's been fiscal mismanagement, the School Reform Act says we must revoke the charter. It doesn't say we can look for other remedies. It just says we must revoke the charter. To the point of a good definition. If memory serves me correctly, we have revoked several charters for fiscal mismanagement. Some before any of us were on the board, but some since we've been on the board. And there have been court challenges. And our decisions have withstood those challenges. And so while I understand the concern, I think part of the issue here is we recognize some of your claims about performance. It's not a high-performing school, but we just, based on the information we had, said, let's extend the charter. The problem was, as I said in one of my comments earlier, had we had all the information that we found when the judge required the financial information, there may have been a different decision about extending the charter. The problem was we asked for information and we were stonewalled. Now, whether how the judge uses the information, that's his proceeding. But the fact that now in the public record there is information now allows us to at least look at what we asked for in the first place. We don't need the judge's determination to decide whether the information that is now in the public record gives us enough to say, you know, does it really make sense to pay twice for maintenance, to have staff at the school who are doing what the contract says the management agency is supposed to do? Is that fiscally mismanagement? No, that's not defined yet. Does it really make sense on the surface to see the fees go up, and apparently, and if maybe the information is wrong, the number of employees at the management agency go down at the same time the budget for program for the schools, for the kids, is going down? Well, maybe the information is wrong. All I am saying is there's now information in the public. We need to look at that, and that's what we, unfortunately, if we'd have had it a year ago, maybe we could have had a constructive argument and worked out something else. We were stonewalled. Now we have the information. And the only decision we have to make is not whether it's a good school, not whether they're good Judeo-Christian, Muslim, Hindus, but did they use the money appropriately? Was it appropriate to say, I don't care how the money is used as long as the school, you know, produces well? Well, we don't have that luxury. We have to care how the money is used because it's taxpayers' money. If it was a private school, I'd line up, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But we don't have that luxury, and that board doesn't have that luxury. The board you represent is supposed to recognize it is not a person's individual money, it is the taxpayer's money. That's why we're sitting here. So I don't argue some of the points you're making. The only relevant point, though, I think we do have some information we need to look at. Let me ask my colleagues, and then we'll get back to
Well, the
you.
only thing I'd like to say, just in direct rebuttal to what your comments were. First of all, I don't agree. It can't be fiscal mismanagement however you define it. That's legally incorrect. You may make, your responsibility is to make a finding, but it can't be however you define
No,
it, because then nobody'd ever know what the heck it was.
Exactly.
Depending on the 7 people sitting up here at a particular point in time. Secondly, and this is a point, again, that I think your staff totally screwed up. The management contract says that the management company will manage these functions, not perform these functions. And there's a very serious difference there. So the fact that I'm managing maintenance doesn't mean I have to have the maintenance employees. The management company, they also manage the teachers. They don't have one teacher in the management company, but they manage the teaching function. So there's a very real difference. And part of this...
I think it depends on the function.
Say again?
It depends on the function.
No. The management contract says that the management company...
No.
will
What I'm
manage the
saying
supervisor.
is you've got to go function by function, whether it makes sense to say you can have a manager here and the work being done over here. That's all I'm saying.
I don't understand that, but okay, that's not an important point to argue right now.
Okay.
But I don't really understand what you said. But the point I'm making, the second point I make is that this lawsuit filed by the government is, as lawyers like to say, a case of first impression. There's never been another lawsuit like this filed in District 1. Whether the AG's office is right about this or wrong will be, fought out in court, and maybe their whole notion is a wrong-headed one. I don't know that. But I wanted to make sure I pointed out that it's not however you define it, and it is a difference between managing a function and performing a function. And that's why there's no double payment. But,
Mr. Chairman, the other thing
Let me
is-
ask some of my other colleagues to jump in here, because I don't want to hog all this time. Anybody else?
I think our chair has covered the ground quite nicely.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, very briefly.
Absolutely.
I think your comments essentially support one of the points that I was making, that if you have an independent duty to be concerned about that, then you can't rely on a staff report that quotes heavily comments by the judge. This body's got to do their own independent fact-finding and then vote on that piece. And I'm not splitting hairs. I'm just telling you that it just shouldn't be relied on as a matter of policy or procedure. This board ought not be relying on unreliable preliminary information.
Would you agree that when we ask for information, it should be given to us so we can reach that determination?
it depends on what information it is.
Exactly.
It depends on what
Okay,
information
well-
it is.
And
I think I know
therefore-
what you're talking about, but some of the
It's a
information...
cycle.
But some
If
of the
I ask you for
that-
information, you don't give it, then you're saying, well, you can't make a decision.
Yeah, but some of the information that you were requesting, as I understand it, had to do with the management company. And I got to tell you, I manage a large law firm. I can't tell you what every vendor of Reed Smith, how much they pay individuals, how many employees they have, or I can tell you whether they're delivering service or not. I can tell you about the contract, and you had that contract. And so, I mean, you're right. We could go round and round and round. I don't think it's a good idea to begin this proceeding. I think the best idea and the best thing this board ought to be doing is trying to fashion a remedy short of this. It doesn't cost you anything. You're not prejudiced by it. And you haven't, not you, I don't think there's been enough dialogue between my client and this board to see if there's a remedy short of revocation. There's no prejudice to anyone about having that discussion, other than staff wanting to rush so they can get the school shut down by next year so they can move 1,600 students and displace the teachers and what have you. That's not a rush. If you care deeply and you're going to uphold your fiduciary duty, which I know you will, then you ought to be looking at something short of that. This ought not be a rush job, because you see the staff report isn't accurate.
All right, gentlemen, I appreciate your coming down. And should we vote in the affirmative with the staff, there'll be plenty of opportunity for more dialogue, more discussion. But right now, I'd like to see if I have a motion from the board on the proposal to initiate revocation.
I would move that we do initiate the revocation procedures for the Community Academy Public charter school.
Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Barbara Knopfler abstained. We now move to
That's different than abstaining.
recused her. Okay, she recused herself, all right. Charter Amendment, St. Coletta's.
If there are any school representatives for St. Coletta or for any of the enrollment ceiling increase requests, I ask that you please just come closer to the front. A hearing on the following board action occurred at the Public Charter School Board's November 17, 2014 meeting. PCSB did not receive any public comment for this matter. PCSB staff recommends that the board approve the charter amendment request of St. Coletta Special Education Public Charter School and approve the PCSB board chair, John H. Skip McCoy, to sign the amendment on behalf of the board. This amendment recognizes St. Coletta PCS's goals and student academic achievement expectations as its accountability plan measures. The school also submitted a notification to PCSB on September 25th that it intends to expand its curriculum, its current curriculum, the functional life skills and functional academic curriculum, by also adding the Syracuse Community Reference Curriculum Guide and the Life-Centered Career Education Curriculum. St. Coletta PCS needs to amend its goals and update its curriculum because the school is currently preparing for its 10-year charter review, which is scheduled to be held during school year 2015-16.
Comments?
There's no one here from the school?
There's no representative from the school this evening.
No comments? And can I get a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have one discussion.
Yep.
I would just like to note for our previous conversation that in our previous hearing, we asked St. Coletta to share with us information about their management company's expenses and contract, and they have done so, and that we are grateful to them for doing that and appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? And I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved.
So next, I'm going to move on to the enrollment ceiling increase request.
Yes, yeah. We want to take these one at a time.
Okay, so I'll present them, I'll give you a summary all together and then
Fine.
one at a
That'd be
time. Okay. A hearing on the following board actions occurred at the Public Charter School Board's November 17th meeting. PCSB did not receive any public comment on this proposal. PCSB staff recommends that the board approve with modifications the charter amendment requests of the 5 schools listed below in your documents and approve the PCSB board chair, John H. Skip McCoy, to sign each of the agreement amendments on behalf of the board. Apple Tree Early Learning Public Charter School, Creative Minds International Public Charter School, DC Preparatory Academy Public Charter School, Ingenuity Preparatory Public Charter School, and the Next Step El Proximo Paso Public Charter School each submitted separate proposals to PCSB to amend their charter agreements for the purposes of increasing their enrollment ceilings. When considering these proposals, the board is encouraged to bear in mind PCSB's enrollment ceiling increase policy, which is found at attachment A in your documents. Also beginning at attachment B in your documents, you will find the specific details of each proposal, including grade-by-grade information. So we can start with Apple Tree Public Charter School.
And I'll recuse myself from this one.
I move to approve the Apple Tree PCS enrollment ceiling increase as amended by staff.
I will second. I had a comment as well. I was just going to note that one of the they're increasing by a fairly significant number, 500 over I think 3 years, and a lot of that is due to their partnership with Rocket Ship Charter School, which is
No. They requested an increase of 500, but the increase recommended by the staff is from 673 to 833.
Okay, thank you. So would we be then therefore voting on the recommended increase
Yes.
as opposed to what they asked for?
Yes.
Okay, I really just wanted to get on the record that
Okay.
I'm definitely supportive of these partnerships that help schools reach down to the lower grades or higher grades, so
Right.
with the rocket ship work. Yeah, I do second the motion.
Okay.
I think you have to ask who went
Yes.
first, Darren.
You
You have to call the question.
Oh, right, because you're. So we have moved and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And we had one.
Now we have Creative
One
Minds.
recusal. Okay.
Can we get a motion on Creative
I
Minds?
move to approve the Creative Minds PCS enrollment ceiling increase as requested by the school.
Second.
Any discussion on the Creative Minds? All in favor? Aye.
Next is DC Prep Academy.
That's you.
Okay, any discussion before we ask for a motion on DC Prep? No, then do we have a motion?
I move to approve as requested.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm recused.
Okay, we have one recusal.
So you got two.
Ms. Mead and Mr. McFloy.
You're recused as well?
Mm-hmm. Two recusals, so that's
Skip and Sarah.
1, 2, 3, 4 in the affirmative. And moving on to Ingenuity Prep. Any discussion on that ceiling increase? No discussion. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve Ingenuity Prep PCS enrollment ceiling increase as amended by staff.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
All right, next step, PCS. Any discussion? Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the next step PCS enrollment ceiling increase as requested by the school.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, and no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, next up.
Okay, well, Linton, I think we've got, idea PCS?
I'm glad to be back with brighter news than I was here for last time. So I have two agenda items for you, but first I will invite the leadership of IDEA Public Charter School to introduce themselves when they're seated.
Lynette Bacchus, principal.
Justin Ridstrom, head of school and executive director.
Welcome.
It is my pleasure to request that the DC Public Charter School Board read into the record the letter from Mayor Vincent Gray deciding to lift the probation of IDEA Public Charter School pending a signed renewed charter agreement with PCSB. This is included in your board materials and available publicly. I can give you some background information.
Would you just a little bit?
Sure. On November 17th, 2014, IDEA requested from PCSB that they be released from their charter probation. This was then sent, we then requested this from the mayor, given that IDEA PCS has exceeded the targets for its 2013-14 and its 2014-15 probationary conditions. These conditions were set upon the school's non-renewal last year when we decided that because they had initiated a turnaround with our approval very soon before their charter renewal, that we would not renew them, but the mayor agreed, because of the turnaround plan, to put them on probation. One of the terms of that probation was that they do additional reporting, but most importantly, they were set very stringent PMF targets to meet for the next few years. As I said, they've already met in last year their targets for this school year.
Okay, I could, you've seen the letter from the mayor, so I would just, as staff suggested, read that into the record. And then I need a motion on the.
I can tell you about the proposal as well. So we're also proposing at the school's request that the PCSB board vote to release IDEA from the reporting requirements that were mandated as part of its probationary status. So it has been required to submit quarterly reports detailing its turnaround effort, particularly gauging student readiness for the DC CAS assessment, but also an annual March hearing in front of you that they've done once so far. The primary purpose for the reporting was to gauge the school's progress towards its PMF targets, but given that they've already met the PMF targets, that reporting is now moot. Any other monitoring that would come out of those reports will continue per PCSB's standard oversight practices. In his letter releasing IDEA from probation pending a renewed charter agreement, the mayor acknowledged PCSB's expertise in such matters and left it up to your discretion to determine whether IDEA shall continue reporting.
Can I get a motion on the staff's proposal, and then we can have discussion if there is any.
I will move to approve the staff's proposal and to release IDEA PCS from probationary monitoring.
Seconded. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions?
We're not going to get a dramatic reading of the letter. Early on in this program. Right.
I'll just start by saying congratulations. I realize an incredible amount of work went into executing over the past few years the turnaround plan, and you have indeed, not only have you exceeded the parameters of the report, I think you've validated our strong preference to see schools that have challenges and are struggling to improve, as opposed to only using the closure or revocation tool, as a hammer. So I think it's today and tomorrow, I understand. It's going to be a good day for your school, but I think it's a good day for all of the charter schools when we can see such, dramatic improvement. So I don't know if you want to make any comments on how you pulled that off.
I'll keep my comments brief. We really most of all want to thank the board for the opportunity and for not just their oversight, but their support over the last couple of years. It's truly been a team effort. I know I spoke before the board at the March hearing, but it's really been just a focus from the beginning on not only our turnaround plan with the help of 10 Square, but also just the focus on laser-like focus on student accountability and staff accountability and the metrics of achievement. So really setting a strong culture of achievement at the school, data-driven culture, and more than anything, a talented staff. And so the work couldn't have happened without developing a great team there of teachers and especially Ms. Bacchus, who joined us last year and is now principal. And so those are really, it's the students and the staff that have contributed the most. So.
Go ahead. Add my congratulations to you and to the leadership and to the faculty and to the students and the community of IDEA. I can't think of an accomplishment in the sector that I've anticipated with more enthusiasm and received with more a sense of victory for the community and for your community and for the students and the faculty that you work with. I think this is a remarkable victory for the city, and I'm very grateful for the leadership that you've provided.
I'd also like to congratulate you all, but extend to some of the people who are not here, like your board, that we've met with over the last few years, because it seemed to me you guys made a good team, and your board stuck with it, helped you hire good people, focused on what had to be done, and reconstituted, did everything they needed to do. So I think that the whole story is a really a great partnership between you guys and your board. Anybody else?
I would just say specifically, your board chair, Mr. Owens, your vice chair, Ms. Fort, your former executive director, John Goldman, are some of the people, in addition to the two of you and your staff and the rest of the board, that we're particularly grateful to for what you've done for the school and for the children and the families of the school.
I don't have anything else to add, but I just also want to say that this is incredibly good news, and congratulations to all of you, and particularly to the students and families who obviously played a big role in making this happen too.
Okay, we can close the love fest and go ahead. Can we-
add another bit of love.
All right.
I don't know your board and I don't know your school very well, but it sounds like a remarkable feat, and so I congratulate you on climbing that mountain.
So I think we've got a motion on the floor and a second. We've had discussion. Assuming there's no more discussion, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
And I believe we have one more.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
I'm going to present on behalf of Rashida.
Are you going to, okay.
The following proposal was open for public comment on October 14th, and a public hearing was held at PCSB's November 17th meeting. 9 members of the community submitted public comment, all expressing support for adding the International Primary Curriculum, that I'll also refer to as IPC, as an approved accrediting body. PCSB staff requests that the board approve the revised accreditation policy. The proposed revisions detail the standards by which PCSB adds an accrediting agency to the list of approved agencies and adds the International Primary Curriculum and the National Commission for the Accreditation of Special Education Services to the approved list. PCSB staff advises that the accreditation process of each agency on the approved list include the following, and finds that IPC and, in cases, each demonstrates each of the 5 components. The 5 components are established standards, self-study, on-site evaluation, monitoring of the accredited schools, and reevaluation of accreditation.
Any discussion? Yeah, then can I get a motion?
I move to approve the revision to the accreditation policy.
Seconded. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion of the accreditation policy? Then all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
We now move to our second public comment period. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board? Then can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the December 15th, 2014 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Another development I awaited with enthusiasm.
Thank you, everyone. Who gets the signs?
Here.
This is.
Ella.
Oh.